The method of our protest must distinguish us from white supremacists. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold. Martin Luther King Jr. was born as the son of a pastor and dedicated his life to being a leader of the civil rights movement for African Americans in the United States, where racial discrimination was openly practiced at the time. In the United States, the third Monday of January, near Dr. King's birthday, is designated as Martin Luther King Jr. Day and celebrated as a holiday. Throughout his activism, he faced numerous assassination attempts and, until he was tragically shot dead at the young age of 39, fought against discrimination with steadfast nonviolence. Additionally, he expressed clear opposition to the Vietnam War in his later years, actively engaging in the anti-war movement. Let's get started. Dr. King was born on January 15, 1929, in Atlanta, Georgia, in the southeastern United States, to Baptist pastor Michael Luther King and Alberta. He loved the church and often sang hymns solo to the accompaniment of his mother playing the piano. His voice was rich and beautiful, which later proved helpful when he spoke in front of many people. The first experience with discrimination for young King came at the age of 6. He was close friends with white twins who lived in the neighborhood and wished to attend the same elementary school as them. However, they ended up going to a whites-only school. When he asked the twins' mother about it, she replied, "You are black, so you can't play together." Despite experiencing ongoing discrimination against African Americans, he excelled academically and was accepted into Morehouse College at the age of 15. Deciding to pursue the same path as his father, he enrolled in Crozer Theological Seminary at the age of 19. It was here that Dr. King encountered the influential book, Christianity and the Social Crisis, by Walter Rauschenbusch, which would lay the foundation for his life. He was deeply impressed by its content, which stated that the gospel of Christ saves not only the human soul, but also the body and material life. In January 1949, the news of the assassination of the prominent figure in India, Mahatma Gandhi, spread throughout the world. That Christmas, at the call of the president of Howard University, one of the leading historically black colleges in the United States, World Peace Conference, transcending denominations, was held in India. Dr. King, who attended the conference, was deeply moved by Gandhi's belief in nonviolence and saw parallels with the teachings of Jesus. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. The Emancipation Proclamation issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1, 1863, abolished slavery in the United States, primarily freeing African Americans from the shackles of slavery. However, emancipation from slavery did not immediately signify the abolition of racial discrimination. Particularly during the Reconstruction period in the 1870s, when it ended, Southern states passed a series of racist laws, and discriminatory treatment based on race continued to be tolerated. In many Southern states, laws known as the Jim Crow laws were enacted, prohibiting or restricting Black people from using facilities in public spaces, including schools, restrooms, pools, and public transportation, leading to segregated facilities based on race. This situation persisted even after World War II, during which the United States claimed to be a land of freedom and equality and a bastion of democracy. In fact, in many states, discriminatory practices were even mandated by law. After graduating from Crozer Theological Seminary and pursuing further theological studies at Boston University, Dr. King met his future wife, Coretta Scott, and they married while still students. Following his graduation from graduate school, Dr. King was appointed as a pastor at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Little did he or anyone else know at the time that choosing Montgomery as his assignment would profoundly change the course of his life. Montgomery, with a population of 120,000, had approximately 40% African Americans, many of whom were poor. Additionally, state ordinances enforced segregation between white and Black people, including separate seating on buses for whites and Blacks. However, Black individuals were required to yield their seats to white individuals when ordered, experiencing extreme humiliation. On December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks, an African-American woman, refused to give up her seat to a white person when ordered to do so by the bus driver and was arrested. Although Parks was released later that day, her arrest incited anger among Black individuals. Learning of the incident through his friend and fellow pastor Ralph David Abernathy, Dr. King decided to initiate a bus boycott together. The boycott began on December 5th, the day of Parks' trial. Dr. King printed over 7,000 leaflets at the church and distributed them to Black individuals, also collaborating with a Black taxi company to provide taxis at the same fare as bus tickets. Parks was found guilty and fined, but the boycott was a great success. At a meeting held at the church that evening, Dr. King addressed nearly 4,000 Black individuals. The method of our protest must distinguish us from white supremacists. We will not resort to burning crosses or dragging white people out of their homes to kill them. We will not resort to threats or insults. We must act according to the profound teachings of Christianity. Here and now, across the centuries, we must again listen to the words of Jesus. Love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Despite intense interference from white supremacists, the bus boycott continued, and finally, on November 13, 1956, the United States Supreme Court ruled unconstitutional the Alabama state ordinance that mandated racial segregation on buses, bringing Dr. King's movement to victory. The Montgomery bus boycott marked the first instance of widespread public participation in the civil rights movement. The success of this movement led to the widespread expansion of the civil rights movement across the United States, with bus boycotts spreading to various cities in the South. Additionally, King's success in the boycott elevated him to one of the most prominent leaders of the civil rights movement. From then on, while serving as a Baptist pastor in Atlanta, he led the civil rights movement across the United States. In 1957, he founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, and became its president. On September 20th, 1958, he was stabbed in the chest by a Black woman in Harlem, but the assassination attempt failed, and King survived. In February 1959, he visited India at the invitation of Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru. In January 1960, he moved from Montgomery to Atlanta, Georgia. In 1960, King resigned from the Montgomery Church and moved with his family to his hometown of Atlanta. Subsequently, sit-in movements initiated by students influenced by Dr. King spread across various locations. However, at the same time, interference from local authorities and white supremacists intensified. Dr. King chose Birmingham, Alabama, as the site for a new movement. At the time, Birmingham was said to have a population of 70% African Americans, but was also known as one of the most racially segregated places in the South. Thus, the liberation movement in Birmingham began in early 1963. The Birmingham movement achieved significant success. One reason for this success was the violent repression by the city of Birmingham at the time. Bull Connor, the police commissioner at the time, adopted an extremely authoritarian stance towards the demonstrators. He used police dogs to attack unarmed Black youths, beat them with batons, and sprayed them with high-pressure hoses. Footage of these events by police officers was broadcast on television and in newspapers, leading the American public to increasingly reject the violence perpetrated by these white racists. Additionally, Dr. King himself was arrested by the Birmingham police during a protest demonstration on April 12, 1963, and was detained in solitary confinement until April 19th. On this occasion, the singer and civil rights activist Harry Belafonte paid his bail, and Dr. King was released. Upon his release, Dr. King immediately resumed his activities, and in May of the same year, the movement in Birmingham achieved considerable success. More than 200,000 people participated in the August March on Washington, commemorating the 100th anniversary of President Abraham Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation. It was here that Dr. King delivered his famous "I Have a Dream" speech. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends. So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. In November, President John F. Kennedy, who had supported Dr. King's movement, was assassinated. However, as a result of these diligent and proactive movements led by Dr. King, public opinion in the United States was stirred up, and President Lyndon B. Johnson, who succeeded Kennedy, showed even more understanding for Dr. King and his colleagues' movement. Finally, on July 2, 1964, during Lyndon B. Johnson's administration, the Civil Rights Act was enacted. This marked the end of racial discrimination under the laws that had been in effect in the United States for nearly 200 years since its founding. Although Johnson, who hailed from the racially divided state of Texas, faced strong racial sentiments there, he strongly advocated for this law alongside Dr. King under the banner of his own creed of abhorring racial discrimination. It is worth noting that it was during the Kennedy administration, when Johnson was vice president, that the Civil Rights Act was introduced to Congress. However, Kennedy did not wield significant political influence within Congress. Johnson, who continued to support Kennedy as vice president, seized the opportunity to leverage his own political influence upon assuming the presidency, collaborating with Dr. King and intensifying legislative efforts to bring about the swift enactment of the Civil Rights Act. Dr. King's significant contributions to the civil rights movement were recognized, and he was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for his nonviolent resistance movement to end racial prejudice in the United States in 1964. Then, on July 2, 1964, the Civil Rights Act was enacted. This legally recognized the rights of African Americans in the United States. The enactment of the Civil Rights Act was seen by African Americans as merely the first step in the liberation movement, not the end goal, but white society regarded it as the resolution of the issue. Deep-rooted discriminatory attitudes still pervaded in education and employment, preventing Black individuals from reaching the top despite standing at the entrance of the staircase. The unemployment issue among Black people, deprived of employment opportunities due to discrimination, was more severe compared to white individuals. Many Black people were conscripted during the Vietnam War, with a majority being sent to the front line. They were compelled to fight for democracy abroad despite not enjoying its benefits in their own country. In major cities, Black individuals were confined to slums, and environmental issues, such as infrastructure development, were neglected due to the focus on the war. By 1966, the nation was divided due to the Vietnam War, and the federal government postponed policies addressing poverty and discrimination. Reverend King considered both war and racial discrimination as equally grave evils, collaborating with movement leaders across the country to devise various plans for anti-war activities. While making clear his opposition to the Vietnam War, which was waged in a distant land while domestic issues remained unresolved, he advocated for further improvement in the treatment of Black people, employing terms like green power in contrast to Black power. Despite realizing his own potential obsolescence, he continued to believe in the possibility of nonviolent resistance, appealing to Black society. Subsequently, King became increasingly involved in the anti-war movement against America's escalating involvement in the Vietnam War. However, his advocacy for civil rights showed no signs of diminishing amidst ongoing racial discrimination. He found himself drifting away not only from the mainstream of Black society, which was increasingly divided over the issue of Vietnam involvement, but also from the mainstream of white society. Moreover, he faced growing opposition from those who considered him a hindrance. Despite bomb attacks and assassination attempts, he continued his activities energetically, miraculously surviving such challenging circumstances. On April 4, 1968, while on a speaking tour in Memphis, Tennessee, at the Mason Temple, Dr. King delivered his speech titled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." Dr. King, who had been supporting the strike of Black sanitation workers in Memphis, Mississippi, delivered a sermon called, "I've Been to the Mountaintop" at a local church on April 3, 1968. It was as if he was bidding farewell for the last time. Indeed, the next day, Dr. King suddenly concluded his earthly life when he was shot while alone, waiting for his friend, Reverend Abernathy, at the motel. Despite Reverend Abernathy's arrival and calls, Dr. King remained motionless. He was rushed to the hospital, but passed away shortly thereafter. His funeral took place in his hometown of Atlanta, where crowds of people gathered to bid him their final farewell. Among the mourners were both white and Black individuals, prominent figures from various fields, government officials, and even FBI agents. At that moment, a white student gently embraced a crying Black girl who was following the procession, whispering in her ear, "Dr. King is still alive. He's praying for us to become true siblings, both Black and white."
Please subscribe to my channel. We're gonna show you world masterpieces in about 15 minutes with manga. Manga is Japanese-style comics that is easy for everyone to understand. We're sure that you can grasp the context shortly.
See you next time.